My wife had an accident, and while she was in the hospital, I discovered her 6-month affair through her phone. I left her there, packed up her belongings, and filed for divorce. I, 32M, never imagined I'd be in this situation. My wife of 5 years was in a car accident last week. Nothing too serious, but she needed a few days in the hospital to recover. I was worried sick, of course, but also relieved it wasn't worse. That relief didn't last long. It was the second night of her hospital stay. I'd been by her side constantly, but she insisted I go home to rest. I reluctantly agreed, knowing I'd be back first thing in the morning. As I was gathering her things to leave, her phone buzzed. I glanced at it, not thinking much of it. That's when I saw the message preview. "Miss you, babe. Can't wait to see you again. Love you." My stomach dropped. The sender wasn't me. It was a name I didn't recognize. I know I shouldn't have, but I unlocked her phone. She'd always used the same passcode, and I guess she never thought to change it. What I found made me wish I'd never looked. Hundreds of messages, explicit photos, hotel receipts, all going back 6 months. I felt like I was going to be sick. My mind was reeling, trying to process what I was seeing. How could she do this? How long had this really been going on? Was our entire marriage a lie? I must have stood there for an hour, scrolling through message after message, each one a knife to my heart. I wanted to confront her right then and there, but something stopped me. Maybe it was shock, or maybe some small part of me hoped there was an explanation. So I did the hardest thing I've ever done. I put the phone down, kissed her forehead, and left without a word. I didn't sleep that night. I paced our apartment, reliving every moment of our relationship, wondering where it all went wrong. By morning, I knew what I had to do. I called in sick to work, and spent the day packing up her things. Clothes, books, mementos, all of it went into boxes. I was on autopilot, moving mechanically through the motions. It wasn't until I came across our wedding album that I broke down. I sat on the floor, surrounded by the remnants of our life together, and cried like I hadn't since I was a child. But I couldn't wallow forever. I had a plan, and I was going to see it through. The next morning, I went to the hospital as usual. She smiled when she saw me, asked how I was doing. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but I kept my composure. I told her I was fine, just tired. We made small talk for a while before I excused myself, saying I needed to run some errands. Instead, I went straight to a divorce lawyer. The lawyer was sympathetic but professional. She explained the process, what to expect, and how to protect myself. I left her office with a stack of paperwork and a heavy heart. Back at the hospital, I struggled to act normal. Every time she touched my hand or said she loved me, it took everything I had not to break down or lash out. I made an excuse about needing to leave early, promising to be back the next day. That night, I finished packing her things and moved them to a storage unit. I changed the locks on our apartment. Then I sat down and wrote her a letter, explaining what I'd found and that I was filing for divorce. I left it on the kitchen counter, along with her house key and wedding ring. The next morning, I went to the hospital one last time. She was being discharged that day. I helped her get ready, making sure she had everything she needed. As we were about to leave, I told her I forgot something in the car and would be right back. I never returned. Instead, I texted her sister to come pick her up. Then I blocked her number and drove to my parents' house in the next state over. It was cowardly, I know, but I couldn't face her. I couldn't bear to hear her excuses or see the guilt in her eyes. Maybe it was selfish, but I needed to protect myself. The next few weeks were a blur. I stayed with my parents, ignored calls from her family and friends, and focused on moving forward with the divorce. My lawyer handled most of the communication, which was a blessing. I couldn't bear to hear her voice or read her words. Of course, the truth came out eventually. Her affair partner's wife found out and blew the whole thing wide open. Suddenly, everyone knew what had happened. The pitying looks and awkward silences were almost worse than the betrayal itself. My soon-to-be ex-wife tried everything to contact me. Calls, texts, emails, even showing up at my workplace. I stayed strong, refusing to engage. Whatever she had to say, I didn't want to hear it. The evidence I'd seen was damning enough. As the divorce proceedings moved forward, mutual friends tried to intervene. They urged me to at least hear her out, to consider couples therapy. But I was done. The trust was shattered, and I knew there was no coming back from this. It's been 3 months now since that night in the hospital. The divorce is almost final, and I'm slowly piecing my life back together. I've moved to a new apartment, started therapy, and am trying to rediscover who I am outside of our relationship. There are still days when the pain feels overwhelming, when I wake up reaching for her only to remember she's gone, when a song or a smell brings back a flood of memories. But those moments are getting fewer and further between. I've learned a lot about myself through this ordeal, about my strength, my values, and what I'm willing to accept in a relationship. I won't lie and say I'm not scared to open my heart again, but I'm hopeful that someday I'll be ready. To those who might judge me for leaving her at the hospital or for not hearing her out, I understand. It wasn't my proudest moment, but in that instance, I chose to prioritize my own well-being. I couldn't bear the thought of playing the supportive husband while carrying the knowledge of her betrayal. It may not have been the most mature response, but it was the only way I could cope at the time. Looking back, I sometimes wonder if I should have confronted her immediately. If I should have given her a chance to explain. But then, I remember the months of lies, the carefully crafted deceptions. How she could look me in the eye every day, tell me she loved me, all while carrying on this affair. And I know I made the right choice for me. The hardest part in all of this has been letting go of the future we'd planned together. The house we wanted to buy, the children we'd talked about having. It feels like mourning a life that will never exist. But I'm slowly learning to dream new dreams, to envision a future that's different, but potentially just as fulfilling. I'm not sharing this story for sympathy or validation. I'm sharing it because I know there are others out there going through similar pain. To them, I want to say, it gets better. It won't be easy, and there will be days when you want to give up. But you're stronger than you know. Trust your gut, set boundaries, and most importantly, remember that you deserve honesty and respect in your relationships. Don't settle for less. As for me, I'm taking it one day at a time. I'm rediscovering old hobbies, making new friends, and slowly learning to trust again. It's a long road ahead, but for the first time in months, I'm starting to feel hopeful about the future. To anyone else facing infidelity or betrayal, know that you're not alone. It's okay to prioritize your own healing, even if others don't understand. You don't owe anyone your pain or your forgiveness. Take care of yourself first. And to my ex-wife, if you ever read this, I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for. I hope you learn from this and grow. But most of all, I hope you never put anyone else through what you put me through. No one deserves that kind of pain. As for me, I'm closing this chapter of my life. It's time to write a new story, one where I'm the author of my own happiness.